Hans Heysen, Peter Wohlleben and Alfred William Eustace are three unlikely but sympathetic souls who placed a love and regard of trees front and centre in their lives. Heysen and Wohlleben, both Germans, had a passionate interest in, on the one hand, the aesthetics of the natural world and the hidden life of trees in particular. Wohlleben wrote a book in 2015 called The Hidden Life of Trees, where he examined the subtle ways in which trees communicate between each other. He uses an expression, the wood wide web, and emphasises the mother tree in any given forest as the epicentre of that network. Alfred William Eustace arrived in Chiltern, Victoria in 1851 from England. He was variously a shepherd, a painter, a taxonomist and a musician. In the 1870s he did a line in spiritualism, but it's his paintings on leaves that distinguish him at this time in Australian art. His scenes on red and white box eucalyptus leaves were supposedly done when canvas was not available. However, his itinerant life as a shepherd carrying his cornet or violin into the forest and his professed spiritualism would make him an enthusiastic Adventist for Wohleben's thesis written some 140 years later. His leaf paintings are like conversation bubbles, with one scene communicating to the next, as though nature in its majestic silence were trying to speak through his pictures. He may have attempted to give voice to that silence. He may have understood that secret language and transfigured it through his imagination and his violin. And Hans Heysen, he knew the mother trees. He painted them incessantly. He was a conservationist and now perhaps profoundly contemporary.
And so I chose this majestic redwood just south of here in a place called Ambleside. It was called Harndorf, but they changed the name at the start of the war. We thought we'd be interned, but in the end they just kept a close eye on us. A sort of house arrest. They must have assumed an artist living in the country can't do much damage.
Those large gums, they left them as shade trees for the cattle and sheep. They were perhaps the oldest trees in a vast forest.
Yes, the ring barking and clearing has changed these hills dramatically. That tree is on a government lease. The council had it marked to be taken down. I paid them the equivalent of its timber value, so they left it, that and its neighbour.
It's good you nominated too. They communicate through their roots at 220 Hz, very slow electrical signal, about 1/4 of a centimetre every minute, and they pass information from one to the other.
I know their community, the trees. You're right, Peter. They talk, pass on knowledge, as you say, one to the other. I'm not a scientist, but I hear their sound at night, low but insistent. I play my cornet and sometimes my violin and try to replicate the sonority. It's a drone, a voice to be sure, but not musical in the way we're familiar with. I try to identify its notation, but it seems more similar to a sound consisting of many notes, like water crackling and gurgling.
In all its stages, the gum tree is extremely beautiful. First, for being a tiny sucker with broad leaves, shooting up like a fountain, answering to the slightest of breeze. At middle age, it becomes more sturdy, more closely knit and bulky, but never losing grace in the movement of its limbs and its sweep of the foliage.
Hans, you paint trees like portraits. My painting seems like a paean to the vastness of the forest, as though the privilege of using their leaves came with an obligation to acknowledge something beyond my comprehension, or as Walt Whitman said, tokens of myself, as though I'd passed this way a long age ago and negligently dropped them.
Your tokens, Alfred. We are finding them and giving them names.